Hi, I'm Renee Renwood, and I'm going to show you how to paint folds on flower petals and leaves. Like the flower is folded, and you'll see that little fold in there. So just like on this little painting here, we've got a flower petal here with a folded edge and a leaf. Let's see here, we've got a couple of them. There's one with a folded edge. So stay tuned, and I will show you how to paint flowers and leaves with folds. All right. I'm ready to show you how to paint folds on flower petals and leaves. Here's a fold on this flower petal. I'm just going to pick this up here so you can see. This is just a print of it, but there's a little fold there on that petal. And here's a leaf with a fold on it right here. All right, so I've sketched out some petals and a couple of different leaves. And I'm going to use a number, I believe this is a number 6. It's a Scepter Gold by Winsor & Newton, which means that it is a combination of natural hair and artificial hair. So it's got the spring of natural hair and the cost of artificial hair. Okay, so I'm going to use Permanent Rose, which is a lovely color here for my petal. I'm going to paint the petal as I paint the fold. So I like to look for an area on the petal that's kind of flat, kind of a straight line, because it makes sense that when there's a fold, it's straight. It's not curved. A little curve is okay. All right, so I'm going to basically paint a wavy line. And I'm going to kind of swoop it down here to the bottom of the petal. And then I'm going to blend with a thirsty brush. So a thirsty brush is a brush that's been rinsed and then wiped on the sponge to get all the excess moisture out. And then I'm just blending. I'm going to pull some of this color up into the side of the petal. This may be too small of a brush. All right, I want to get this petal, this fold, just a little bit darker. Oops, a little splatter. Always adds a nice touch to have some splatter. All right, doesn't that look like that petal is folded over? Fantastic. I'm going to switch to my larger brush because these petals are big enough. This is a number 10. It's a Princeton brush. I think it's all unnatural fiber, which is fine with me. No weasels had to have their tails pulled out. All right, so this one has kind of a flat place at the top. Actually, it kind of has 2 flat places, so maybe we'll put 2 folds in it. All right, so it's got a little fold there. And then let's add a fold here. Kind of like that last one we did. I'm going to try to blend some of this out, some of the right here at the start of it. Just kind of blend it out. Using that thirsty brush again. I think I want a little more color here now that I've blended it out, adding a little more color. All right. Oop, got a hair on there. All right, on this one, looks like it's flat on this side. So one of my favorite things with watercolor is that I can just turn my paper to make it convenient for me. So I'm going to put my fold right here. I'm just going to follow the shape of this petal. And get my thirsty brush, which is where I've rinsed my brush, wiped it on my sponge. So sometimes it's easier to blend than others. Right now I've got a fan going because it just got kind of warm. And so the paint wants to dry on the paper a little fast. All right, I think this needs to just be a little darker right here. Yep, doesn't want to cooperate. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. So it's really not a big deal to paint a folded petal, but it really adds something to your painting. makes the plant look much more realistic because they do have folded petals. All right, let's look at that. Oh yeah, that looks great. Okay, now this one I already painted, so I'm going to use a little darker color to put the fold in. Let's see, I think this is Theo Violet. It is, and for some reason it doesn't come in the professional grade. All my paints are professional except this one. I'm sure there's a professional grade that actually matches that color, but I have not figured out what it is yet. So for now, I just have, I think it's Grumbacher Theo Violet on my palette. So pretty similar to this one. But I have to blend. Right now it doesn't look like a fold, it looks like abstract petal. So once I blend it, ooh, that's this nice staining color. It really wants to not blend. That's staining colors just go right down into the paper. All right, I think that's good. Let's get that corner there. Okay, and then another kind of fold you might find on a petal is a petal that's starting to die. And so the petal's kind of cupped and it's all around. This is where the petal is attaching to the stem on all of these. But on this one, let's say it's a peony that started to fade. So I'm going to go ahead and use that permanent rose on there. So it would be kind of wavy. This brush loses hair sometimes. Kind of wavy around the edges. And it might not be folded on all the edges, but it might be folded on quite a few of them. And another thing that we might see in a cupped petal like this is that it might be darker kind of towards the center. So I'm going to add a little darkness here, maybe even more, maybe even a little alizarin crimson, which is just a shade darker, a little shade redder. And I'm going to blend that out. You don't want that lightness in the center there. It's too light. All right, so it's an illusion that the plant has folds and that it's cupped, but I think it's a pretty effective illusion. So that looks like it. I'm going to go ahead and just make a little spot here where it's, yeah, that helps too. Yeah, because maybe that much of it would not have been folded over, but this way. Just all right, so now we've got our folded petal, and we're going to move on to some folded leaves. So I just discovered that this brush, I bought it at a sale, and it's called a Dagger Striper. And I just discovered that it's amazing for leaves. So I'll do some leaves with this and some leaves with my regular brush. All right, so I'm going to use some sap green just to paint a leaf. It has such a nice sharp point that it really gives it a nice pointy point. I'll come back in with my other brush to paint the folds on this with a different color. Oops, where am I here? I'll get this one too. It's actually easier to use on a leaf that I haven't drawn ahead of time because I can just make the shape without having to worry about following the lines. Just make one that way so you can see what I'm talking about. Just lay down the shape and then come around with the other side. And there's a leaf. Okay, so I've made those leaves with the Dagger Striper. I'm going to go ahead and just put some folds right in these leaves without a base color. I like to put a base color, but I think since this is about putting in folds, I'm going to show you how that's done here. All right, so let's say we're going to put a fold, I think over here on this side here, on this one. So I'm going to follow the shape, make my wavy line. Get my thirsty brush and blend. So it's really the same process that I used with the petal, only green and not pink. This leaf though is a little different. It's got a horizontal, no, not a horizontal, it's got a lengthwise fold. So, in fact, I'll show, yeah. Okay, so the inside of the leaf is going to be darker. So this is the inside right here. That's the that's the part that's folded over. So this is dark because it's, and so I can blend, or I can just paint the whole inside with the darker color. So this part of the leaf would be painted lighter. All right, let's see here. I need to make that a little bit darker. Brush is a little too dry. And then blending. All right, I've got a few more of these leaves, and then I'm going to show you how to do an oak leaf tip. So once again, making my little wavy line. So depending on where you are, the wavy line can be any shape you want. When I do this oak leaf, I'm going to have a certain kind of wavy line, because otherwise it's not going to work. All right, here's another one that is folded lengthwise. This one I'm going to blend a little bit. There's not a whole lot of it to blend into, but here we go. There. Now this leaf is folded in half. That's the horizontal leaf. So here's the stem, and this part is, we're seeing the back of the leaf here. So I would put some, oops, not that dark, some sap green on there. Kind of a lighter shade. This is the front of the leaf, the top of the leaf, and that's the bottom of the leaf. So I'm going to, when I paint leaves, I usually use 2 or 3 greens. So sometimes I mix ultramarine blue with my greens, and sometimes I mix burnt sienna to get a browner green. I think I might need a little more ultramarine blue there. Too much water. I still need it to be a little darker. I'm just going to go with pure blue here. There's already a little green in there. So, doesn't that look like that's behind? And when I put the veins in, it'll really make a difference. All right, I'm going to show you some sap green here. I usually have 4 greens on my palette. I have sap green, olive green, sap green. This one is hooker's green. Then we've got either viridian or phthalo green, which is beautiful, but I think it's great for use in water and waves. It's not, to me, a natural tree-looking green. And then olive green, which is fabulous for leaves and things. All right, so I'm going to mix a little burnt sienna into this green. Get kind of an orangey, brownish green. Gives a nice effect there. Green. So I'm going to go ahead and do these. I think this one would be at the top of this leaf. So then that ends up having a little color in the fold rather than just having it be white. Same thing with the flowers, you can do that. All right. This leaf looks like it's already folded, so we're just going to take it a little further. The color doesn't want to come out very dark. Let's add a little more pigment there. All right, and then that's our folded lengthwise leaf. I have some colors on my palette. My palette is a mess, but I feel okay about that. A lot of these colors are things that I use over and over again, and so they're there ready for me. And if I need some clean space on my palette, well, I can clean it. All right, and then I'm going to blend that out. You can see I went out of the lines a little bit. That's just a little oopsie. We can fix that easily by just kind of wiping it with our brush and dabbing it with a paper towel. I'll take off most of that excess. If I was to put a background around that, you wouldn't even see it. Okay, now my oak leaf. So you can see that the ends of the leaves, tips of the leaves are pointed, and they have 3 points. So my fold has to look like that because that's what's folded over. So I'm going to use burnt sienna there. I think I'll use my smaller brush here. That's a little tiny space. All right, so I'm going to have one little point, one bigger point, or maybe not much bigger, and another point. That point actually should be much higher, much bigger. I can fix that too, though. Yeah. By using my thirsty brush, I can just lift off a little bit of that. There we go. All right, here I am. I'm going to go ahead and put those points in. And I'm going to, it's definitely important to blend. I'm going to add a little burnt sienna there. So we can go from darker brown to medium brown back to our pale center color of our leaf. There, isn't that amazing? You can see that it's bent there. All right, then one other thing I wanted to show you. Now you've got these leaves, and they've got these petals and leaves, and they've got these pencil lines. So you have a couple choices here. You can just, this is a micron pen. You can use an ultrafine Sharpie, micron pen, Pitt pen, Accurate pen, different brands of waterproof marker pens that are archival. So that's one solution. Now we have this one that's got, we're going to try this a different way. We're going to erase the pencil lines and put a background around that will show us where the petal is. So if it's a flower, a lot of times I'll surround it with green because that's a color that might be around a flower. So when I do a background around a flower, I like to soften the edges. And I don't want just a circle of green around it. I'm going to soften all those edges. Then I would add other colors, maybe even some of the colors that are in the flowers. But you can see how that really makes that petal stand out. So it depends on if you're wanting to put a background or not. Let's see here. We've got some of that same color. So we put a fold on both sides of this one. So there's something called lost and found edges. And a found edge is where I can see the whole outline of that petal. A lost edge is where I don't see the whole outline, I see part of it. And the thing about that that's really wonderful is it draws your viewer in. And they have to make up where that petal is going from there. In fact, I'm going to kind of take it out this way. So we have a little bit of the white here and the white here that are just combined. And where does that petal actually end? Nobody knows, but the viewer will create it with their mind, and it'll keep them interested in your painting for a longer time. Okay, and what else was I going to show you? So you can also use your marker to put veins. I usually try to put just a few. I don't want to get too detailed because it can be too much. It can just be too much. I can also surround this one with my marker, and I don't have to follow it exactly. You can see how I made the tip go beyond the tip. That's kind of a nice little trick. And I could outline my fold or not. That's just another choice that I could make. Well, I guess I'll outline my folds on this particular little one. But again, you can make your little veins. Oh, let me do this in this one because this is really going to make a difference here. All right, and then we have the vein coming up here, so you can see it's folded. Unfortunately, I splashed a little paint right by it, and so I have to scrub that out. And if I can't get it out with this, I have a scrubber brush, but I'm not going to use it right now. So the other option is to put veins in your leaves with a liner brush. It's also called a rigger, and it's very thin and very long. It's much longer than this. The hairs are much longer, so it holds a lot of paint. It's called a rigger because it's used to make rigging on ships. It's also called a liner because it's used to make lines. Oh boy, really? Yep. Okay, so I'm going to make my veins on this little oak leaf. I like to kind of follow the vein into the stem, otherwise it's kind of weird. Why is it there, but it's not? Why does it stop at the stem? Let's see, it makes nice thin lines. You can just lift it up at the end. As you lift, you get a little point. And that is how to make folds in petals and leaves. Try it. You'll have a great time.